Welcome back to the Echoes podcast. I'm Jessica Smetana. He's Mike Golic Jr. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. However you're celebrating this week, if you could give us a little Christmas present and like and subscribe to the show, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, social media, TikTok, wherever you go on social media, that would be a nice little present, Mike. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about the playoffs for a little bit. We're going to talk about Marcus Freeman, Giants ongoing reporting. We're going to talk more about the roster, and we might even, unfortunately, mention the men's basketball team at the end. We'll see if we get to it, Mike. But let's start from the top. This episode's coming out on the 23rd of December. Yep. So how are you celebrating your Christmas week?
So I am celebrating Christmas this week by actually going to be the Notre Dame representative at the Pop-Tarts Bowl this year. I got invited to go down to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, so I'm leaving a Christmas Day. That's why I'm loosely shoehorning this into Christmas celebration. I leave Christmas Day night to go down to the Pop-Tarts Bowl to take in the game, take in all the various game day Pop-Tart related snacks and fare that they've got going on, and hopefully get a chance to eat the giant transubstantiated Pop-Tart on the field after the game.
Ooh, okay. So I need a little bit more information here. Who is sending you there? Did they ask you to go to smooth things over for Notre Dame, or is this just you're a Pop-Tart influencer this week?
I think this week I am just a Pop-Tart influencer.
So it's a coincidence that you're a Notre Dame player.
Yes, it just
okay.
I was very deferential and hey, I know things were a little weird on Selection Sunday. If maybe you guys don't want me to come, that's totally fine, since I am very Notre Dame connected, host a Notre Dame podcast. But no, it's a wonderful group of people that put that bowl game on. I think we've both been pretty clear that Notre Dame's decision was never an indictment of how we feel about bowl games, and certainly how we feel about the Pop-Tart Bowl, or at least I do. I don't want to put words or Pop-Tarts in your mouth. That's what I'm going to do at the end of this week. So I'm jacked up for that. BYU Georgia Tech should be a pretty awesome game too. Both coaches also, seeing them at the press conference for this game where they shared in the inaugural or historical toasting of the Pop-Tarts and the championship trophy. You got big boy coaches like Brent Key and Kalani Sitake, both big fellas that I'm sure appreciate a good Pop-Tart. So happy to be among like-minded company there.
They also put sprinkled decals on the team's helmets. I'm curious how that would have worked with the Notre Dame helmet, Mike.
I wonder, would this have fallen in the Notre Dame Shamrock? Again, I've got a couple of the Shamrock series helmets here, and the ones that have pissed people off less. I don't
like them.
I see. And this is always the anarchist player in me. When I was a player, Notre Dame, known for the tradition, all that good stuff. We wore the same uniforms all the time. Everybody loves it. You do also kind of as a player doing something different. I remember the ones that everyone hated on the outside, that maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome and I was so just desperate for something different. The Notre Dame 2012 Chicago uniforms that we wore when we dog walk Miami were largely hated by the outside world. They were 2/3 blue and had that blue leprechaun on it. I have that so proudly displayed in the den in my parents' house in South Bend. I loved those uniforms.
As a decorative item, I think that they look wonderful. As a helmet I'm watching the team wear on the field, I don't like messing with the helmet. That was always my issue with the Yankee Stadium alternate uniforms that the team wore against Syracuse in 2018. I liked that they did a Yankees pinstripe motif, but the helmet was navy blue, matte navy blue. It made no sense to me. It just did not look like Notre Dame. So anyways, I digress. I'm excited that you can be our Pop-Tart field reporter. You can report back about what the team missed out on while you're there, Mike.
Yeah, that was my joke this weekend. I went down to cover the Texas A&M Miami game for Bleacher Report, and I was like, I'm the one Notre Dame person the playoff committee let in. And we're going to do that same thing with the Pop-Tarts.
Good one, Dad.
Here. So, yeah. I'm wearing the vest. If you can't tell, I'm already descending rapidly into dad culture as I age here.
I have golf club wallpaper behind me in my dad's house, so I have no room to talk. I'm also wearing a vintage men's wool sweater from my cousin's vintage shop in Pittsburgh, so that's the kind of vibe we're at. We're getting cozy this week.
What are your plans for the holidays this week, Jess? Outside of clearly spending some time at home in very dad-friendly confines.
So all of my plans are food and cooking and baking related. So I think you'll appreciate that. My family does Christmas Eve 7 fishes dinner because we're Italian. So this morning before we recorded this, I got up at 6 a.m., went straight to Caputo's in Chicago, got like, I don't know, 6 pounds of shellfish that are now in the fridge for the next 2 days that we're going to have to make. But also this year, special surprise treat. I don't know if you watched the Bears-Packers game on Saturday. I know you were
Yes.
busy with, college football stuff, but the Bears served a specialty hot chocolate at Soldier Field that I am going to attempt to recreate for my family and hopefully not poison them with on Christmas Eve.
Is it? Did I read right that it was infused with Malort somehow? Is that the secret sauce?
It was hot cocoa. If you don't know what Malort is, I highly recommend going to your local liquor store if you're in the Chicagoland area, getting a bottle, pouring a nice glass over some ice, and just taking a nice little sip. You'll love it. It's delicious. It's so smooth, and it goes down so easily. It is a Chicago-based specialty liqueur, and this hot chocolate has, I believe, according to someone that follows me on Blue Sky who had it, it was about an ounce of amaretto, a half ounce of Malort, hot chocolate, and then there's salted caramel marshmallows on top. So I think today I'm going to make the homemade marshmallows with the salted caramel and then concoct the hot chocolate on Christmas Eve and see how it goes.
All right. You know what? I'm very intrigued. You're a monster for that sell of Malort. Anyway, I'd imagine most people listening to this podcast are probably of the initiated. But if you're not, Jess is absolutely right. Go do that. Film your reaction and send it to us at the
Please,
Echoes
yes.
Pod on all social media.
Exactly. I'd love to see your reaction to it. So let's go to your thoughts from the Texas A&M Miami game that you attended this past weekend. And if you're a Notre Dame fan who is not interested in playoff talk, which is probably a lot of them this year, just fast forward for a few minutes because we'll get to other stuff in a little bit. But we should talk about the first round, just especially because for whatever narrative purposes, people are, there was a lot of conversation about Notre Dame during the games or on ESPN all weekend or whatever. So we're just going to talk about it for a little bit and then we'll move on. But let's start with the game that you watched against the two teams Notre Dame lost to earlier this season.
Yeah, well, Jess, I think that is the thing I was curious about was what was the experience like this weekend for Notre Dame fans? Did you watch? And if you watched, were you kind of as surprised, maybe not surprised as I was, that Notre Dame still felt very much like they were in the playoff based on how much discussion between the broadcasters in a lot of these games, especially the group of 5 games, constantly bringing Notre Dame up as the comparison point, certainly in my game. But then also, you get guys like Francis Mauigoa who had some shots for Jeremiah Love after the game. Clearly, Notre Dame was not far from a lot of people's minds in this process. And being down in, College Station for this game, you can imagine the question I got a fair amount was, hey, are you rooting for anyone in this game? Is there someone that, based on, how they beat you or what have you, are you rooting for more in all this? And my answer was obviously no, I don't care. I don't care who wins any college football game Notre Dame's not playing in. I never have and I never will. I can't muster those feelings for the rest of you the way it happens for my alma mater. That's the only one that can affect me in that way. But it was a lot of people just it was almost like the funeral, sorry for your loss thing, but there was that, but it was also and we saw this at the end of the college football playoff, the season before the final rankings, where the ACC crowd had kind of turned their attention towards Alabama and said, oh yeah, clearly they shouldn't be here and you guys should be. So it was a lot of people saying stuff like that, trying to be complimentary of, oh, this was BS. You guys would have dog walked Alabama or Oklahoma in that game, or you guys should be here over the group of 5 team or anything like that. There was a lot of that in the way that I experienced the time around that game.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a lot of fun to have to deal with. As someone that just watched the games from home, I also want to say, I think you may be unique in that aspect that you don't root for or against teams that aren't Notre Dame. I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are haters. And if Michigan's on or USC is on or Miami is on or whatever team wronged Notre Dame, they will root against that team as if it is, as important to them as Notre Dame winning. But maybe that's just the people I surround myself with. I don't know.
I think, well, I mean, I guess I should say maybe of like the non-rivals edition, because obviously,
Okay.
like, when I'm not a broadcaster, if you're just catching me at home on an off day, like, yeah, watching USC lose brings me a sick bit of satisfaction. Like,
Yeah.
watching
Okay.
Michigan lose, like, I blew someone's mind this weekend when I explained to them that I actually, as a player, hated Michigan more than I hated USC, but that's kind of a separate discussion. So,
Right. Okay.
yeah,
Fair enough.
So, and like, I don't know, it was interesting. Like, I don't know about you, Jess, like, the other thing that I never am going to really subscribe to is using outcomes to go back and revisit the process that got us there.
For sure. That's a terrible way. That's a terrible methodology to analyze anything. And so, yeah, I think that was like the one discourse topic that did annoy me was like, no one ever said Alabama or Miami couldn't win a playoff game. It's could they win a national championship? And I think Miami came out looking better this weekend, despite the fact that obviously their offense really struggled against Texas A&M. And that was an extremely low scoring game. But I think watching like Alabama and Oklahoma, like Oklahoma gave up a 17-point lead, making just so many terrible mistakes. Alabama, their offense looked like their offense has kind of looked the last month and a half. It wasn't very impressive, and they took advantage of a lot of mistakes. And so, like, yeah, I'm not surprised Alabama beat Oklahoma, but that doesn't mean that they should have gotten in over Notre Dame. That doesn't prove anything. If they win the national championship, then maybe I'll say, okay, you know what? Fair enough. I won't argue with it. I still disagree with it, but I won't argue with it. But winning your first round game is not, that doesn't really mean anything to me about how the process works, especially now going into the Rose Bowl. They're going to be 7-point underdog to Indiana. So we'll do like a little preview of that next week. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, results over process, I don't think is proving anyone right or wrong in this conversation, because Alabama and Miami both won their first games.
Yeah, I again, you're right. If everyone goes on or wins the national championship, might makes right. I understand how this sport works, and we go from there. But yeah, like overall though, like it was a reminder, and I think this was the thing that made me the first time maybe sad was getting back to getting to College Station and seeing SEC Nation, ACC Network, College Game Day, the whole college football world descend on this location to see the home crowd's response, how juiced. It made me remember South Bend last year, and it made me remember like how special these games are and that run is, and what it's like to now see teams get that opportunity to play a game of that magnitude at home the way that we did last year. And so to remember that, not only are we not going to get that chance again, but you don't get to watch them play again, period, was pretty a tough reminder of that, even in the midst of like being wowed, like, they did a great job. Like College Station was awesome. Like they showed out there. That place did it justice in a way that we figured it would, but it did make me sad in that way.
Oh, for sure. I would have loved to watch Notre Dame play. I would have loved to be in Norman this past weekend, Mike. Would be great to be in Norman for a couple days. I would also say if Notre Dame had a home playoff game this past weekend on Friday, like last year, people would have died. It was so cold. It was horrible on Friday. Well, we'll take a break. We'll come back with some scheduling information because, Mike, we just got some news about the future of the USC rivalry. Spoiler alert, it's over. It's all over. So we'll talk about that after the break. College football not feeling as juicy as it once did? Let me put you onto something that'll shake up your Saturday and every other day of the week.
Because now that Wendy's has crispy chicken tendies and a powerhouse lineup of new sauces, it's time you transfer to the hottest team in the league.
That's right, Team Tendies. Wendy's Tendies. They're making their undeniable rookie season one for the books. Enjoy first-string flavor from some 5-star recruits. Rep your new favorite team everywhere you go, but make sure to cheer with your mouth closed.
Take it to the end zone of savory sauces like honey barbecue, creamy ranch, and the new Wendy's signature sauce to experience a total taste bud blitz of flavor. It's time to join a team that won't upset you with an upset.
Taste the phenom that's gracing the gridiron with its juicy, crispy, and tendery tendencies. Don't fumble the bag. Commit to Team Tendies and call the most delicious plays in the playbook.
All right, huddle up, guys. Tendies on 3. Tendies on 3. 1, 2, 3, Tendies. Let's do this. Wendy's Chicken Tendies, now at participating U.S. Wendy's. Welcome back to The Echoes. Mike Golic Jr., Jessica Smetana at The Echoes ND Pod on all social media is where you'll want to be tuned in, because as we were recording this, again, we record on Monday, the podcast comes out on Tuesday, and thankfully we chose this time window because big news for the future of the Notre Dame and USC rivalry on a bunch of fronts, Jess. Reports from Ross Dellinger. What do we got here?
I will read from his Yahoo Sports story, Mike, because right now this is the only info we have. But as you may remember, we had Pete Bavacqua on the podcast 2 weeks ago and said that he was feeling pretty good about renewing the USC rivalry with athletics director Jen Cohen. He said there could be a little bit of a gap in scheduling after next year, or after the next 2 years, I think he said. I'll go back and check that. But anyways, it sounded like things were moving along. But according to this, not so much. The latest round of discussions among administrators at each school fizzled over the last 2 weeks. A stunning about-face. In fact, the two programs were on the verge of finalizing a 2-year extension of their agreement in late November, with USC agreeing to host Notre Dame next season on the traditional date after Thanksgiving and the Irish hosting in 2027. However, USC officials determined that the game date was not ideal considering past decisions from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee in punishing schools for losses, especially those late in the season. The latest discussions between Trojans athletic director Jen Cohen and ND athletic director Pete Bavacqua centered around a possible game next year on week 0, though that did not materialize. The two administrators have agreed to work to restart their series as soon as 2030, those with knowledge of their talks told Yahoo Sports. So, since we talked to Pete Bavacqua 2 weeks ago and he said, yeah, we're looking good on next season and we're having great talks, everything's going really well. Seems like some things have changed, Mike.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, and it's weird that kind of like what changed at the end of the College Football Playoff Committee's decision-making, this was always right in the center of the conversation. Like this, to my knowledge, was always at the heart of the issue for USC, which is they wanted to follow the larger Big Ten paradigm shift of not playing difficult out-of-conference games because they believe just winning in that conference is enough to warrant you playoff access, and you'd be exposing yourself to unnecessary risk in this situation. The truth of all of the fear-mongering around playing these games, from what we heard from Steve Sarkisian in Texas, talking about not being rewarded for playing Ohio State in week 1 and losing, to other teams like this, I don't know if that's substantiated in any meaningful way that seems consistent. Like, Jess, if you had a Notre Dame team and a USC team that were both incredibly highly ranked at the end of the season, playing in the Coliseum the week before things went, and they're both inside the field, and all of a sudden someone wins or loses a close game. I think we've seen in the past, like the committee, depending on how they view you then, is usually pretty willing to not knock teams all that much in that spot. So this seems as a very conservative approach that USC wants to continue with, and now the game is not going to happen.
Yeah, well, like, let's talk about the future. I mean, the historicness of this in a second. But to your point about the college football playoff aspect of it, the only reason that Miami is in the playoff is because they had a really good win against Notre Dame, who is not in their conference. Like, we saw Vanderbilt, a team that went 10-2 in the SEC, not make the playoffs because they didn't have one of those wins this season. And so I think the opposite is true, where if you do play in one of these games and you win it, it's a tremendous reward, and it can, in fact, negate multiple losses that you have later in the season. And I doubt Steve Sarkisian would be saying that if they had not lost to Florida. Like, that is why they didn't make the playoff. It's not because they lost to Ohio State in week 1 in a close game with two young quarterbacks. That's not what kept them out of the playoff. So I don't think that strategy has been borne out, to your point, in the factoring of playoff teams. I think the opposite is true. If you play one of these games and you win them, then you are rewarded for it. And if you lose one, you may still have a bit of a buffer. Now let's talk about the fact that this game has been, like we talked about earlier this season, this game has been going on for almost 100 years. And the only reason it has ever not been played is World War II and COVID. And now you can add the 12-team college football playoff as a catastrophe to that list of like worldwide events that have prevented this game from being played, I suppose. But this is a pretty monumental decision. And I'm frankly stunned after we just talked to Pete Bavacqua about it. It sounded like it was going to happen in 2026.
Yeah, I maybe I just got so worn out during the first round of conversation about this, but my kind of thought on this is still, it's been a great rivalry. It's one I appreciated getting to be part of as a player. If you don't want to play it, we're not going to beg you to stay. Like, go and schedule some FCS team and be on your merry way and try and handle your business in the Big Ten in a way that thus far you've been unable to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my thought process as a college football fan, this is maybe like a little esoteric, I suppose.
Sure.
But And also like a little bit of cope because Notre Dame, has lost 2 national championship games in my lifetime, but
Sure.
has gone through seasons of bad, good, great, but has not won a national championship game, as have most college football teams, because it's really hard to do that. And there's only one national champion and there's 136 teams. And my thought process has always been like, I don't really watch regular season college football games to decide if my team's a national champion, that weekend. Like that's a thing for the end of the season. And my enjoyment every week comes out of, did you win your game? Did you beat your rival? And then at the end of the season, like, did you win 10 games? Did you go to a fun bowl game? Like, did you have fun? Basically, like that's kind of what it should be about, because only one team's going to win the national championship every year. But it just feels like right now it is impossible to be that kind of college football fan, because everything, including scheduling, these historic 100-year-long rivalries, is now being put through the lens of, does this help me make it to the college football playoff and win a national championship? And I just think that is going to make a lot of this less fun. I mean, it's less fun when you're Notre Dame and you don't play USC every season. Like that's a marquee event on your calendar. Like that's a game that people travel for. They circle on the calendar. Like they look forward to, they tailgate for. Like this is like a humongous rivalry game, Mike. And it just is so disappointing to see the 12-team college football playoff, a playoff which has expanded your access to entering the field if you have losses on your record, is now eliminating a marquee rivalry in the sport of college football.
It feels like the melting of the polar ice caps for college football, where like these are all signs we should be a little bit more concerned, because at its core, college football has always been an incredibly like regional and ritual experience, right? It's built on familiarity and these rivalries that have origin stories that some people can't trace. They're just so handed down to them. And, what made college game day so great for so long is, hey, you're going to places and shining a light on how certain groups do certain things around this sport and their team, even if they're not the marquee team necessarily. That, to your point, is one of the few teams that might win the championship. And I always worried that as we went, and you're right, focus more on the TV revenue, focus more on the helmet games, focus more on the end result here in a way that kind of makes the regular season just a means to an end for all of that, that you would start to erode some of the things that have always made the sport great. And we've already seen that in the conference realignment and the way that that's affected that. Certainly, I mean, USC, like, I never thought they'd have any issue with this, because they were a part of leaving a conference and ultimately blowing up the old Pac-12 because it did not serve them financially anymore, in a way that, listen, you can make realistic arguments about the mistakes made by the people that ran the Pac-12 that led to that being something that might not have been primed to last much longer. But USC had no problem getting out in front of that and making sure that, hey, we're going to be somewhere that serves us. And so this, to me, is just another extension of that in terms of decision making. But you're right, overall, like, doesn't make me worry now. Like, everyone's still going to tune into the playoff. There's still going to be a ton of popularity there. But do you start to wear down the foundation enough over time when you just treat these things that were once load-bearing parts of the sport like they're insignificant now?
Yeah, I'm not trying to make the argument that like college football is going to become less popular or people will stop watching it. And I think that like that would be an overreaction. But I do think it's just a shame to see a 100-year rivalry go because of a reason that I don't think is a good one, honestly. Like, win the game. Like, this just reads to me like we are afraid if we lose in November, we won't make the playoff. Then don't lose. It just feels very just... Well, short-sighted.
I do think part of this is also like a top-down reaction from a lot of these coaches who understand, like, if I don't get this right and do this, I'm getting fired sooner than later. And so that reaction from that, I think, makes everyone operate out of a place of fear, where it's, what can I do to make sure? And like, I know on a micro level, like I've been around coaches that coach like that, where like, hey, I'm just going to coach you through looks and do all the things I need to do to cover my ass so that they can't point to me as the thing that's wrong with us and that gets us fired. It takes courage to go out there and coach things you believe in, to give guys a chance to go and execute, knowing, hey, you might not be ready for everything, but that can work out. It feels like the micro version of the macro that we're seeing around this, where like these people are all afraid that if things don't go well enough soon enough, they'll get run out of town, even being better than most college teams, because they're not playing for the thing that now, kind of like the NBA culture, we've Stu got this. We've rings plus minus the conversation to the point where this is what we get on the other side.
Yeah, and USC also is signing a really good recruiting class next year too. It really right now doesn't make sense to me. Like it's really, I really don't like it, but I'm also with you where like we knew that they were trying to change the terms of this. It sounded like Notre Dame had gotten them to agree, at least maybe in principle, to the traditional November, October dates, at least for next year. But they decided it wasn't going to work out. So whatever, like Notre Dame in the same report announced they are scheduling a home and home with BYU, funnily enough. So now you could do some scouting for us at the Pop-Tart Bowl on Bear Bachmeier and all the BYU players. Notre Dame will play at BYU in 2026 and at Notre Dame in 2027. Also want to point out, I thought there was like some report about a scheduling freeze on Notre Dame. It doesn't seem like that is doesn't seem like that has been borne out in all of this. But yeah, this is end of an era, Mike.
It is. And like, it's sad. Like, to your point, like, I still remember sitting with my dad the night before we played USC in 2012 to finish the season in what was a pseudo play-in game to make the BCS championship. We were 11-0. They had started the season number 1. They were unranked now. Like, it ended up still being a close game because it's a rivalry game, because that stuff tends to happen. And I sat with my dad in the hotel, and this isn't like hyperbole. This isn't bullshit. This is what happened. Like, I sat there and I was like, I understand what's on the line. I came here to win this game. Like, you come to Notre Dame to win this game, to sit around and look at Theo Riddick wearing the leprechaun hat after, holding the shillelagh, to sit at the top of the tunnel with Braxton Cave and toss down the Trojan sign at all the sad USC fans, to go party in their locker room and have a good time. Like, you're right. Those are the scenes that, like, I don't remember a lot of like wins and losses in a ton of games. I remember that one. And a lot of it had very little to do with the fact that we were going on to play against Alabama in the title, and had everything to do with the fact that we got to rub that team's nose in it that day on the field. And so when you lose some of that familiarity, and maybe people will argue that you lose some of that with how transient the sports become and how much the portal, but I still do think at a lot of the upper echelon programs, there's more continuity than people give credit to. And Notre Dame is certainly a testament to that in their roster. And like, to lose out on that, we saw how much that game meant to those guys this year in South Bend. Like, there was an extra edge to those dudes, and it is sad that we lose that. You're right. It is also hilarious, the whole thing. I mean, I saw Pete Sampson retweeted it, but the governor of Utah, who came out after Notre Dame didn't accept the Pop-Tart Bowl bid and said, this is absolutely the right move. Getting embarrassed in a bowl against BYU would be really hard in your program. Much smarter to avoid playing tough teams so you can keep your brand intact. Like, obviously, the politicians' involvement in all of this has become hilarious in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the governors of states with college football teams this year have not covered themselves in glory, I would say. Yeah. Mike,
it makes a lot of sense, I would say, for BYU and Notre Dame, though. Like, when you looked at teams that might be in a position to turn down Notre Dame and teams that wouldn't, if you're BYU, you're looking at this year going, what more can we do?
Yeah,
you were great in your conference. Yeah. Your only losses were to Texas Tech, who's a top 5 team, and that still wasn't good enough for the committee to put you in. So they're on the other side of this conversation we're having, where maybe the Big Ten and SEC assume that just getting through your conference slate makes the college football playoff your birthright. The Big 12 and some of the members, I'm sure, are searching for answers. And a matchup like this, especially in the middle of the season when these conversations are starting to get closer to being had, I think is smart positioning by them. Like, it makes sense. Again, if you're BYU and you're saying, hey, if we win this game, if we have that optimistic view, this could be the thing that all of a sudden pushes us through that doorstep that we were waiting on and couldn't get through this year.
Absolutely. I want to just bring this back, though, to what we were talking about with the 12-team playoff and the conference expansion being part of the reason that this is all, much messier than I think was anticipated when the 12-team playoff was kind of a sparkle in everyone's eye a few years ago. But this kind of ties hand in hand with that, because if you're a USC fan, historically, your 3 top rivals, like the teams you've played the most in the last 100 plus years, are teams that you will no longer play every year: Cal, Stanford, and Notre Dame. And that's because the Pac-12 as we knew it doesn't exist. That's because they've canceled the Notre Dame series, at least in the short-term future. And now they're part of the Big Ten, and they're playing a lot of teams that they don't have a ton of history with. And I do think that whether or not, it's a big deal to you as a fan, it just kind of, like you said about like regionality and rivalry and all of that, like it does sort of matter, I think, to the people to just have some sort of thing that they can rely on in a season, that they know what they're going to see and they know who they're going to play. And like, there's some common sense and like rationality to it. And so I just think that like that also, and USC is not the only team that's like this, by the way, but
No,
I just think that in general just doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the fans. It just kind of makes things even more just, I don't know, feel as money driven as they are.
No, you're absolutely right. It matters. And my feeling that maybe borders on apathy isn't rooted in this not mattering. It's rooted in me being sick of hearing the argument from USC that, we don't need this game, or the fans around it and the Colin Cowherds of the world who continually go back to that as their reason for not doing this. That just, to me, is absurd. This was never about a need thing, even though I do think it is beneficial to both teams as a resume point in the ways that you've described. But like, this is also not a game, clearly, as evidenced by this, that Notre Dame, air quotes, needs. Yes, their schedule is a little weak going into next year, and that's going to make the margin for error pretty thin. But as we just saw here, like, BYU was more than happy to, despite all of the reports to the contrary, step up and schedule Notre Dame because, surprise, surprise, it benefits them too. Who knew?
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, we'll move on. We have other things to talk about. I'm sure this will come up again in the future, but should we talk about Marcus Freeman now, or should we?
Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back and then we'll take a deep breath and we will assess the current state of Notre Dame's head coach and some reports about the NFL interest next here on The Echoes. All right, welcome back to The Echoes at The Echoes ND Pod on all social media. Check out the YouTube channel to see our faces and maybe see if we're leaking any confidence here right now, because Jess, as the offseason coaching conversation continues to turn both collegiately for the University of Michigan, who has still not named a new head coach, and for multiple NFL franchises, Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's head coach, continues to be a name that comes up. Mike Garafolo over at the NFL Network said, quote, Marcus Freeman mentioned as a guy that should be in the Giants coaching search. In that case, I expect him to be the foremost among the college candidates when it comes to their interest. Obviously, Diana Rossini, multiple NFL insiders reporting the Giants' interest in Marcus Freeman as one of the top candidates in their job search after firing Brian Daboll. So my question to you is, how nervous are we feeling at this point?
I don't know, Mike. I think part of me is like, I think he'd be a good NFL coach. And I think that is clearly something that he wants to do. So if he wanted to do it, and right now is coming off of a couple of years where he's very highly thought of in college football world, then it makes sense, because as a coach, you always sell high. I mean, to your point in the last segment about coaches always being afraid that, the next game may be their last, or their next loss may be the one that ends their career or whatever. It makes sense from that standpoint. But then I look at what Marcus Freeman has built, especially over the last two recruiting cycles, and having a quarterback that's coming back, and just over the last couple of weeks, consistently hearing reports about players re-signing at Notre Dame, or, whatever, staying at Notre Dame, assistant coaches staying at Notre Dame that were involved in interviews at other schools. Like, that's why it would surprise me, because it feels like the first couple seasons at Notre Dame, like, Marcus Freeman had to, patch a lot of holes in the roster and was still figuring things out, and was not a super experienced head coach, and, lost a few like pretty crappy games. Even last year lost a significant, one of the worst crappy games ever. And like, he's really grown as a head coach over the last few years, but this season was really one of the first years that you saw his fingerprints all over the roster, not just with the portal players and the veterans that he had a hand in recruiting, since he was defensive coordinator multiple years ago, but even like now seeing like freshmen and depth and like the Tay Johnsons of the world come in and make an impact. Like,
we had a Thorpe Award finalist at Notre Dame.
That's why it would surprise me. So I don't know if I'm nervous. I would love to see them announce that he's been extended, because at this point, since Pete Bavacqua last did his press conference, which now was a couple weeks ago, and as we know, things can change in a couple weeks. It sounded like they were pretty just focused on making sure Marcus was happy. And we haven't had any update since then on like any contract extension. So all of this is to say, I would understand why he would want to do it. And I especially understand why he'd want to interview. I don't think anyone objects with that. I just think the timing would surprise me.
Well, and I think to your point, like, people re-signing, like coaches staying, like, I feel like if there were real doubt on this, you'd probably see a bit more in that regard. And maybe that would be the canary in the coal mine on this, because Marcus Freeman, as we know him, does not strike me as the kind of guy that would leave all of them hanging in the wind if there were real chances of him going. And listen, if he ends up going and taking the job, this is another one of those spots where I can point to the calendar. Like, I'm not going to use it as an indictment of Marcus Freeman's character or anything like that. I just don't think he strikes me as the kind of guy that would tell all these recruits and coaches, hey, I'm going to be here, if he didn't plan on being here. And I also think from the other side, like you mentioned it, I think Marcus Freeman is going to be a coach that attracts NFL attention every year he's in South Bend from here on out.
Yeah.
And so really it comes down to, like, do you think the Giants or the Titans or any of the jobs currently open or that could come open are the best opportunity for you to make that jump? Because Marcus knows this. Like, he'd be in pretty unprecedented territory in terms of a, former player who doesn't have a ton of NFL experience making that jump either as a player or as a coach. Like, a lot of the analogs and Dan Campbell and others spent plenty of time as assistants before they made that jump to being a head coach at the National Football League, and that you're also tied to the quarterback. So it's like, really fundamentally, does he believe that Jackson Dart, Cam Ward, or any of those young quarterbacks on teams that could have openings are the kind of guy that won't get him fired in a few years? And I saw Urban Meyer kind of had, words for that on his podcast and talking about it. But like, I think that's fundamentally what it comes down to. And that's just the part that I have the hardest time believing in, is that you would look at either of those situations specifically, since they're the ones that are open right now, or the roster construction, and say, hey, I would rather jump for that, as opposed to, like, quite honestly, Ben Johnson is a really interesting comp here. Mm-hmm. Dude waited as long as he could until he found a situation that he thought was going to best serve him. And I think Marcus is going to have that ability right now to potentially wait for a better job or situation to open up if he's going to make that jump to a level that, like when he made the jump at Notre Dame, he didn't have any prior experience and it worked out because ultimately he's made of the right stuff. I believe it would work out for him at the next level, but I just don't know if the jobs available right now are the ones that worry me a ton with that.
Yeah, I mean, then it's possible a more attractive NFL job does open. I mean, I'm a Steelers fan, and God only knows what's going to happen this season. Although Steelers, once again, Mike Tomlin's 19th consecutive winning season, so who knows about that one. But I do think that a lot of times in these situations when you see coaches' names on these lists, it's like, okay, they're trying to leverage some sort of extension, or maybe a detail in their extension or something. I do think that this seems fairly legit, that he, at least from what I've heard about him, he is actually interested in it. I just think it, like you said, it could be bad timing. It could be good timing. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in his personal life, but like, it would be surprising timing from just a Notre Dame football standpoint, because it seems like the team's got a lot of stuff going for it in ways that his first few seasons in South Bend, like they knew that there were going to be certain gaps in places. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, we'll see what happens. Obviously, if there is any breaking news there, we'll do an emergency reaction podcast, Mike. But you probably don't want to be hiring a head coach this late in the coaching cycle, as I think Michigan fans would tell you right now.
Yeah, and like, even with Notre Dame, having a lot of things that would be seen as advantageous to someone potentially taking that spot, you're already whittled down into the pool that you'd be, diving into for that. You'd be opening yourself up to transfer portal, mass exodus there in a way that could set the program back. And like, to your point, I do think that's an interesting way to look at it too. It's like, I always said, from the competitive standpoint, could never knock Marcus if he wanted to take an NFL job. It's the highest level of the sport. It's the truest test of you as a competitor. Like, all you could do is shake your hand, say thanks for time served, and wish him well in that. But from a competitive standpoint too, it's like, man, wouldn't you want to see this roster that you have built to this point go and find out how high you can fly? Like, after getting snubbed this year, certainly there's the idea of maybe do some of the things in the current landscape of the sport, make that more difficult. I think based on what we've seen from Marcus Freeman, who falls very much into that category of guys who abhor losing far more than they love winning, I'd imagine he's pissed off to try and take that team next year and see if they can, go back and kick everyone's teeth in with this. So we'll wait and see. I'm always baseline nervous with this stuff.
Oh, of course. Well, this is where I'm at. Like, just from a broader sense in college football, like, nothing surprises me. Like, Brian Kelly leaving for LSU was as surprised as I've ever been about a head coaching decision in my lifetime from any head coach anywhere, not just from like a Notre Dame fan perspective. Like, that one really caught me off guard. I was walking in Target when a reporter texted me and was like, "Did you hear anything about this?" And I was like, "No, I think you're punking me." So nothing would surprise me anymore about any head coach doing anything. This is just a unfortunate reality, especially if it's a good coach. Like, people will try to hire them. It's a tremendous compliment that Marcus Freeman is good enough that the New York Giants are interested in him. But to your point, like, if he is that good, then maybe next year is the year that he waits and takes that leap, or the year after that or something. It just, right now, it would be, I think, pretty surprising to me. But not that surprising, like I said, because nothing will beat Brian Kelly going to LSU.
No, exactly. So, so we'll put a pin in that for now, and like Jess said, we'll come back to it if something changes. I think the expectation is still, I'd expect Marcus Freeman to announce an extension that makes him one of the highest paid coaches. I think I saw Pete Sampson write about this in his mailbag or something, like probably one of the highest paid coaches that hasn't won a championship in the sport, which is
behind
pretty
but like above a lot of other guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that's still the case, and we can go into this offseason and come back to you guys next week, which we will have a podcast next week. We're very excited to talk about some of the stuff we didn't get to today in terms of potential portal targets, some of the guys that have left. Shout out to Billy Schrouth, Emil Wagner, guys that are going on to their NFL future that we're very excited for, and that will present a challenge for Notre Dame and how they build that roster in the future. But obviously the biggest domino that has to fall in any of this when it comes to potential targets in the quarterback portal, re-signing guys, is, hey, is the head coach going to be sticking around?
Yeah, Mike and I had like a whole rundown of like roster stuff we wanted to talk. We're going to talk about Nick Marsh. We're going to talk about so much today, but then this USC news dropped. So, hey, at least it didn't happen like 5 minutes after we finished recording. So anyways, let us know in the comments what you think about the end of the USC series as we know it. Again, could pick up in a few years. We'll see, but feels like the end of an era here. And I'm curious how Notre Dame fans and Trojan fans are handling that one.
It will be interesting. And you know what? Darn it, Jess. It looks like we're just out of time. I don't think we're going to be able to get to the Notre Dame men's basketball updates that we had planned in mind.
Darn.
So we'll just have to get to that next time.
Bummer.
Dear God. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Enjoy the time with your friends and family. Enjoy a very ice-cold glass of Malort, courtesy of Jessica Smetana. And we'll be back with everything next week. Thanks, and go Irish.